Welcome to Elan Vital Journeys, where healing meets purpose and transformation begins from within. I'm your host, Phil Owens, veteran, guide, and founder of Elan Vital. This podcast is for those who've walked through fire and are now ready to rise. Whether you're a veteran living with PTSD, someone healing from deep trauma, or a seeker on a spiritual path, this space is for you. Here, we explore what it means to truly heal, not just survive, but transform. Through real conversations, personal stories, and insights from the edge of consciousness, we'll journey into the work of trauma, integration, altered states, spiritual growth, and the power of reclaiming your story. So take a breath, get grounded, and let's begin this journey together. Welcome. Today is my lifelong friend. Well, not lifelong. We met in 1996, I think you said. Tina Weiss. We met when we were both in our 20s and had just moved to Colorado. And we've been friends since. There's been some gaps in there. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about some of those gaps and what caused those gaps. But and we have some several mutual friends, Sista, who is Lisa. I call her Sista. I think you still call her Sista. So we've known each other since then. We kind of met under some not precarious circumstances, but I first met Lisa. I was dating her roommate, and you and Lisa were friends through like Tiffany, I think, right? And then we all just hung out together. Like we were a very close group of friends that would go camping and skiing and doing all the Colorado things together. In full disclosure, you and I dated for a period of time, and Yuta really wanted to know what happened. So I told him you might be willing to share that. And then we kind of went down some separate paths. We both got married, and you had Quinn, and maybe we'll even talk some little funny stories about my interactions with Quinn.
Only if it's G-rated.
And then, so Tina's been one of my helpers, mentors, guides, somebody I could trust to bounce thoughts and ideas off of, and maybe keep me from maybe going too far sometimes. And when, maybe I was thinking about doing something crazy, and you might be like, I don't know if you really want to do that. So maybe we'll get into some of that stuff. So welcome, Tina. I'm glad to have you here. Thanks for being part of the podcast and part of my life since 1996.
Thanks for having me here. This is, this is a long time. It's really, it's an honor when you have people in your life that you meet in one situation and we're both two different people. And then we watch each other through our journeys, and we're very different people today than obviously when we first met. And I always think it's just such an honor to see someone not only watch their lives unfold and watch them become the person that they're going to become regardless, it's just which path they take. But it's also an honor to have someone in my life, you being one of these people, that get to watch me and help me sort of guide when I'm going off path as well. So it's reciprocal, right?
Yeah. So 1996, you just moved to Colorado. Tell me a little bit about what brought you here, and how did we end up connected?
So I was living in Michigan. I grew up in Michigan, and I was living there, and I had two very close friends that had moved to Colorado, and they came back to Michigan for our high school reunion, and they talked me into coming to Colorado. They had it all planned. They drove me. I was a social worker, so I didn't travel a lot, didn't have a lot of money. And so they said, we've got you. We're going to take you to Colorado. They took me to Aspen. They sold me Colorado. It did not take very much to do so. And I went back and I asked for a layoff as a social worker. And then I moved out to Colorado. And it was, like you said, 1996. I moved in with one of the people that I just mentioned, these two people that I grew up with. One of them, and she was a roommate with this Lisa, who was your friend. And that's how we all met. They were living across the street from me. So I lived on Garfield Street, and Lisa, Tiffany, with Sippy, and Lisa, Tiffany, and Alisa lived across the street. And so that's how we met. I ended up, I went right into social work when I came here because that's all I ever knew. That's what I went to school for. That was my degree. And then I'd watch you guys kind of, go off to ski or go off to camp. And I was, waving goodbye in the driveway because I couldn't afford, the cost of equipment to go skiing or camping or any of those things. And I think at some point it sort of hit me that, there's nothing noble about being poor, right? And so I wanted to be able to enjoy the things that Colorado offers. And so Tiffany, who was living across the street, got me an interview at G&K, which was a uniform company. You were already there. I think you were already working there.
I think I was too. Yeah.
And it was, it's that uniform company where it says like, the shirt says like Bob's a welder on one side and Bob on the other, right?
Yeah.
And I was in sales and you were one of the drivers. So that meant that every week you'd go pick up the dirty and drop off the clean. And that's where we met. So you were a driver. I don't know, it's like a service guy. I don't remember what the actual
I think
title was, driver.
Like route driver.
Yeah, route driver. That's what you were. And I was in sales.
Yeah, I forgot about that job.
That is where we first met. But again, you were not even close to the person I'm sitting across right now.
Yeah, which made me think, as you were talking about that, like you were a social worker, and I was pretty banged up at that point. Like maybe that was part of the connection, was like the social worker. Maybe you were drawn to help the banged up little boy, and I was drawn toward the social worker, the loving, like caring, nurturing.
It could be
social worker in you. Yeah, G&K.
And I'm not someone who usually makes the first move, but you had caught my attention. And so I knew that you were camping. And I remember this. I knew you were camping with some friends, and I ordered you a pizza and had it like delivered to some campground. I don't know all the details of how I did it, but that's how I let you know that I was interested.
I think we were, it was in Aspen, and we were staying in town for a night, and then maybe we're going to Conundrum the next day, the hot springs up.
I don't know.
By Aspen. Yeah.
But that was my big move. I was like, I want him to know I'm interested. And so I ordered you a pizza, and it did it. You came back and you were
I
like,
love pizza to this day.
Yeah. You were like, thanks for that pizza. You want to go grab a drink? And
so then G&K, and then how long? Let's see. I think I got married before you did, right? So I got married in 2005.
Yeah.
So we were friends for, was that almost 10 years?
Yeah.
Before then. And then I got married, and my wife at the time was not very fond of female friends, so we didn't relate a whole lot then.
Yep. And
then you got married. When did you get married?
2008. Yep, 2008.
And then had Quinn
the next year, 2009.
And then I was trying to think the other day, when did I end up getting divorced? I think it was, so then we'd remain in touch. We still had like Sista or Lisa is still like very much in both of our lives. So we would remain in touch through Lisa, and then we would talk occasionally, run into each other. And then once we were both divorced, maybe a little before, we reconnected and have had a great relationship since. And I got funny stories about Quinn. And so, yeah, you alluded to the fact earlier about the person that you met's not the person sitting here.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
And the person that's sitting here is not the person that we sort of rekindled our friendship. That is a different. When I first met you, you were this sort of farm boy from Oklahoma, right? Grew up in a family that, didn't believe in doctors, didn't believe in healthcare the way that, I grew up, where, we go to the doctor all the time. You'd been in the roofing business with your father and did that. And I thought, and was actually a big part of the reason why we split, because we dated for a couple of years. But I thought that, because this is where I was at the time, was that, and I remember sitting in the parking lot in your truck at G&K talking about this, that you didn't have enough goals, enough sort of, trying to think of the word, like focus to like do something. Like you didn't really care. You're like, yeah, I'm going to deliver, these uniforms. I don't care. And I'm like, no, I want someone that really knows what they want to do. Like I knew what I wanted to do. Right. I look back and I just laugh at myself, but you got me back for it very well. So, and I remember saying to you, I don't care if you decide you want to draw the lines on the road. I just want you to really want to do it. Like you don't know what you want to do. And I can't be with someone who doesn't know what they want to do. And certainly that wasn't the reason. Of course, looking back, I didn't know what I needed. And we joke about this now. What's so funny is that I thought you didn't have goals and you weren't achievement oriented enough. And then you went on, right, to like leave me in the dust and start your own business and have more than one business at a time and just do so well. And it was such a great lesson for me to learn. As I sat there, and I didn't know better, I just didn't know better, where I thought that I didn't see my partner at the time going into on a path that was good enough or that would be enough, and probably made you feel not enough. And you moved on and you were more than enough. You were more than enough back then too. I just didn't know any better. Then we sort of lost touch. I mean, like you said, we saw each other here and there, but, I had to respect your wife and you respected my husband. And then when those things didn't work and we sort of reconnected, we did go one night when we first reconnected. We went to a bar. We were sitting at the bar and we were talking, and, we love each other to this day. And so there is that love. And I think I tried to sort of make it a little bit more, and you were really great. You said to me, and you said to Lisa, you are way too fragile. I'm not even going there. You're way too fragile. And I think I would have gone there again. And you respected me and enough. And I think now, looking back, you also, I'm assuming, which is somewhat dangerous, that you also knew that there was a special friendship and we didn't want to mess that up. And so I'm glad that you kind of shut that down and said, that's not what's happening. And then since then, I feel like it's shifted into a really close friendship. Like you're probably my closest guy friend that I have. And I think it's important to have, people of other genders, as your friend. I think everyone has different perspectives, and I get a much different perspective from you than I get from my girlfriends. And it's important to me. So I talked about how you sort of changed in terms of, in a joking way, how you sort of left me in the dust.
Yeah.
So from a material standpoint, you've done very well, and it makes me so proud and humbles me and taught me lessons. And we joke about it, like I said. But I think even more importantly, you were trying to find yourself, as we all are. You had a lot of, I feel like you had a lot of anger. There was lots of secrets that I found out later. We can talk about some of those, including a child that you weren't in touch with at that time. When we sort of reconnected and really shifted it to this really close friendship, I saw something in you that I now know that was unfolding, but I couldn't have put my finger on it at that time, where it wasn't, yes, you had already proved to whoever you were proving it to, yourself. I think maybe some of it your father while he was still here.
Most of it,
your dad. And maybe me and maybe some other people in your life that maybe at some point made you feel like you weren't enough. You'd already gone, like you'd already proven or done what you had to do to say, like, you were all wrong. Like, look at me now. What was more important was that didn't seem like it was enough anymore. Like, yes, I did that. Yes, I've owned my own company. Yes, I've traveled the world. It was still something was missing. It was that, which is something we have in common. I think it does bond us, is that, there's got to be something more. And there's been, how many conversations about, how do I know what I'm here for? I know I want to help. I know I want to service others. And that has become a cliche. But when we started talking about it, and till today, it's not a cliche with you. I recognize that because I feel like it isn't with me either. Obviously, I was a poor social worker, so it's not a cliche. But that gnawing, and I think that gnawing, I remember many, many years ago, you may have mentioned to me in passing, like, that you'd like to do something to help, here or there. So I feel like there might have been a little bit of a whisper in your ear that, there's something else I'm supposed to do. But as with anything in life, when you ignore it, the whisper gets a little louder and it gets a little bit more nudgy, until it screams loud enough that it's impossible to ignore. And that's what I feel like I've seen with you, is what was a whisper of something else, that I'm supposed to be doing, and letting it unfold. And I know you've worked with Randy, your therapist, for so many years. And I think Randy's really helped you in terms of guiding, some guide rails and then some of the other things you can talk about as well that you've done with some of the men's groups that have really helped you. I think, I never thought about this till just now, I think that portion of you showing us all, leaving us in the dust, whatever you want to call that phase, I feel like that needed to feed your confidence that wasn't there before. Like, you needed that to be able to be where you are today, because you did that. So it built that confidence that, man, if I can do that, coming from where I came from, then I can do anything.
I also learned that that's not where the joy is. Like, living that life that's not a purpose. It wasn't my life. And you nailed it. Like, a lot of it was to earn my father's love and trust. It was that father wound that I was trying to heal. And I was trying to heal it by accomplishing things. And, it's funny. My father came to visit me once in Colorado. So the entire time I lived here. And I think maybe I've mentioned, but my father's passed, for the audience there. He came to visit once, and like, I showed him all the stuff I had done. And in the end, as he was leaving, he's like, this is all great, but like, where'd he go to church? Like, you didn't take me to church. I was like, well, I don't go to, this is church. Like the mountains are church, nature's church. And so, and then, he passed away. And when he passed away, that was over. there was no more earning anything. Like, it was where it was when he passed away, and that was it. I'm going to go back, and then I'm going to come back to this. One of the things that maybe you don't know is I learned from that conversation that you talked about that drive, that I was still dragging quite a bit of military baggage with me. And it was really hard for me for a long time to imagine my life. So in the military, it's day by day. So I couldn't imagine what tomorrow might look like because I had to survive today.
Yeah, that makes
and
sense.
Then, so it was day by day. And then as I healed some of that trauma, I could start to see maybe a week out, 2 weeks out, a month out. It was a very slow process. And by that point in my life, I don't remember specifically, but I would say it was really difficult to imagine beyond the next year, maybe. So, that was a very helpful thing for me to realize that, like, oh yeah, I'm still dragging this military baggage with me. And a lot of, like, what I talk about is reintegration into society from the military is very challenging. On previous podcasts, I talked about how, like, one day I'm in Hawaii, had just re-enlisted, and things unwound, and 5 days later, I was processed out of the Presidio in California. Like, there was no reintegration into society whatsoever. So it was like, good luck. And I think that's what a lot of vets that we see who struggle is, how do I reintegrate into society? How do I see beyond tomorrow or the next couple of minutes? So, and then to fast forward to the piece with my dad, I was very fortunate that after that, and, some things that unfolded, I realized that, so you talked a little bit about doctors and stuff. So maybe for the audience sake, I talk a little bit about, I grew up in a religious cult. And that meant that we didn't believe, or my parents did not believe in doctors, medicine, hospital, any of that stuff. If it happens, it's God's will, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. So you don't engage those things. So based on that, as my dad was approaching his, late 60s, I knew that his time was pretty limited. His brother was on taking heart medicine, like heart thinners and stuff like that. And I think, I didn't really have grandparents. My grandmother died. My father's mother died when he was 14. And then his father died when I was like 7 or 8. So there was this history of, like, his lifespan wasn't going to be really long. And so I was fortunate enough through the work that I was doing to know that I really needed to be okay with him passing on at any given moment. And so I planned a trip to chokes me up to think about it. I planned a trip to Mexico, and I took my mom and dad down to Mexico. And we spent a week, 5 days, I think, in Punta Mita, Mexico. And
I just got okay. Like we had conversations. I know it's the first time I remember, and it's probably the first time that my father ever hugged me. Like I can remember times where I would like wrap my arms around him, but he never hugged me back. And so that was the first hug I ever got from my father. I think it's the first time he ever told me he loved me. So I was able to get to this place of like, he was a baby when I was born, basically. He was maybe 20 at best. And so
with a lot of children, like a
big
big family.
And he did the best he could. He was abusive. He was a lot of things, but in the end, he taught me a tremendous amount. Like some of the skills, like I can fix almost anything.
Yes, you can.
And I learned that from him. Like, so I learned a tremendous amount from him. And so making that peace up front, like consciously making that peace was a huge piece for me. And then, I took him deep sea fishing. He loved to fish. That was kind of the only thing that we ever did together was to go fishing. And I took him deep sea fishing, and he always wore t-shirts, these like white t-shirts. And he shows up on the boat in a white t-shirt. And I'm like, Dad, it's going to get pretty hot out there. That's not going to work. So I ran back in and got a long sleeve, like UPF fishing shirt. Unbeknownst to me, I don't know why this chokes me up, but my mother buried him in that shirt. So kind of full circle there. Okay. I think I went back and picked up everything that came up when you were talking about that. So I think you left off with, we reconnected. At this point in our lives, I'm divorced, I think, a couple of years, and you'd just gone through a divorce. And so I think the other piece of this that is really important is the power of community and connection that in a large piece of at least my life, and it seems like most people's life, at least here in the Western world, like it doesn't really exist. And the power of these long-term relationships of people who truly know us and who we feel comfortable being authentic with. I've been in forums, EO and YPO forums, and those were part of that. But now being part of men's group is being very powerful, which maybe then to segue there is like, you did some work with Alexandra, which was very powerful for you. And then you introduced me to Eli, which is Alexandra's husband. And I've had the pleasure of doing some pretty good work with Eli, and our paths even crossed there in Zion a couple of years ago.
That was really intense.
But yeah, and I told a story with Randy on a previous podcast about how that anger you talked about, that like I was full of anger and rage, and it was in a group with Eli where we were letting that go, and it was a group of like 5 men, and we were like pushing and screaming, and the other guys were holding, and I was kind of half-assing it. And I think Eli knew that there was more than I was doing, than I was letting out. He came over and he kind of called me on it, and I told him, I said, Eli, if I let all this out, like I've spent years balling this shit up and learning to keep it in there. Like if I let it out, we're never getting it back in.
Right.
And
It's a damn.
Eli looked at me with this funny look on, puzzled look on his face. And he's like, Phil, why would, I think he said, why the fuck would we put it back in there?
Mm-hmm.
We're letting it go. We're letting it out. And I was like, oh my God, that's an option. So yeah, that was through my relationship with you that I ended up with working with Eli and Alexandra.
Yeah.
So you.
Yeah. And I mean, that was very powerful when we were both in Zion, and I was, there was a big mountain and you were on one side of the mountain. I was on the other side, and I was working with the women, you were working with the men. And we heard that the men needed to come down. It had been a real rough night, although you actually were the only ones. It must've been your military that didn't have a rough night, but these other guys were all having a real rough night. The wind, and I think it might've been raining, and you guys were all camping. And I think Eli surprised you with the day of fast, which you did not expect. So the mosquitoes and the weather, and now you're hungry and so you're in this very stripped down version of yourself and super vulnerable. And so we'd heard, because we were sharing a chef, like the chef would go up and then come down, and the chef.
So real quick, like it's an immersion. So we're in Zion.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1,000 acres, privately owned, surrounded on all four sides by the national park. And it was just, I think there were about 20 of us men in that group. So, okay.
Yeah. And we, and the women were, we were spending our time in a cave, and we were meditating in a cave and doing journaling and some sacred theater and those kind of things. And so they said, okay, the men have had a real rough time and they could really use some feminine energy. We don't want any of you talking, and we don't even want you to see them. So stand in a circle outside. They had us on this yoga pad, if you will, outside, and stand in a circle, close your eyes, and we're going to have the men, and they'll come up in front of you, and just let them feel your presence, your energy. Don't touch them. Don't talk to them. Just stand there. And so of course, when someone says I have to close my eyes, I'm peeking because I can't, I can't not. So I didn't see you at first. I obviously knew you were there, but I didn't see you at first. And when I did finally open my eyes, you were standing. You were the one partnered with me. And I don't know if that was.
It was not planned. It was sheer coincidence. And I think for me, it's just a symbol of like the universe when we let go and trust. Like the chances of me being the one was standing in front of you was, I don't know, I can't do that math, but how many? Yeah, there were like 15 women and like 20 of us. So like one in
the
a
chances,
couple of hundred, very slim. Eli did not know.
No.
Until afterwards, I told the group, and Eli was like, wait, what? You knew? So it definitely was not planned.
No, it wasn't planned, and I would argue, and I'm not sure that you, I just wouldn't use the word coincidence because it doesn't feel like a coincidence. No, it was not a coincidence.
It was almost like I knew it was going to happen before we were standing outside the gate waiting to go in. And I was like, I'm going to end up across from Tina. I just know I am. And then sure shit.
Yeah, opened my eyes. You were right there. And we both just sobbed. We just held each other and sobbed. And that's why I think why our teachers were both like, wait a second, we're like, no, we know each other. And they were like, okay. But we just sobbed in each other's arms. And it was for everything you were peeling off. And it was for everything I was peeling off. And the safety that we feel, with each other. And that was a really pivotal moment for me in our friendship. We'd already gotten extremely close with just talking about conscious men and conscious women and talking about, why are we here and how do we make it mean more? And we're getting older and, what does this last part look like? And, why are we alone? And should I be polyamorous or should I be I mean, there's everything under the sun we have talked about. Yeah. And by the way, now I'm starting to date. So what do men like? They like this or like that? I mean, it's great to have a guy friend to be able to ask those questions because when you're out of the dating field, to be able to bounce it off. So lots of very intimate discussions before that But that moment for me was really important, really, really important in terms of, we didn't say anything.
Yeah.
We just knew.
No words. Yeah.
We just knew, and we just sobbed, and it was safe, and it felt understood.
Yeah.
I just felt that I understood what you were going through, where you were, without knowing the details. The details aren't important, and that you understood.
Yeah. Makes me think of Dave Mann, who's in the men's group. I don't know where he got the saying, but he says that sometimes feeling seen feels so much like love that you can't tell the difference. And that was one of the few times in my life to that point that I felt like I was totally seen and accepted for who I was without a single word spoken. It was extremely powerful for me too. And, part for, people, this, but for the audience, people listening, I was in this phase of like trying to figure out how to transition from this warrior, living in a very masculine dominated patriarchal soldier world into this more fluid balance, like how to balance the masculine and feminine energy. And it was a really tough, I think it took, a couple of years. Prior to that, I remember going to a session. Eli did like a weekend thing up in Boulder. He was living up in Boulder at the time. And I went up to a weekend with him. And I had recently dated this woman who was like, you're too feminine. You're too like, and I was like, me? Too feminine? Right. Do you have any idea who I am?
Right.
And I was like, well, maybe I don't have an idea of who I am, So that week with Eli was very, we talked a lot about this razor's edge of like pushing yourself to the edge and living on the edge of like, of just life in general. But like even that balance can be a razor's edge that we learn to live. And you've helped having, like you said, having this relationship, this masculine feminine relationship, a very strong, powerful feminine and what I think is a pretty strong, powerful masculine, and teaching each other how to kind of balance it out and kind of soften it or strengthen it.
Yeah.
And it's been.
I've definitely learned a lot from you in terms of, I'm confident, I'm, a strong, independent woman, but it's just as important to be soft and in my heart and vulnerable and warm and gushy. That's just as important. Maybe even more important. Yeah. But that is something that I've learned with you as well. Because I've opened up and been so vulnerable at times. And I like what's happened. So it was a gift, right? It's been a gift because I liked the outcome. And if I stayed this strong, independent, nobody's going to mess with me kind of person, I would never get those gifts. So that's something that you've taught me.
Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that's been a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. I think we're probably going to have to do a follow-up episode because I feel like we got like half the story so far. So yeah. Thank you for coming. Mm-hmm. I appreciate it. Thanks, Tina.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me for this first step of the journey. If something you heard today resonated, inspired, or stirred something in you, share this episode with someone you care about. And if you're ready to go deeper into your healing or transformation, visit elanvitalmentoring.com to learn more or connect with me directly. Until next time, stay present, stay grounded, and trust the force within you.